Hello, my name is Jessica Livingston, and I am the chairperson for the San Francisco Audio Engineering Society. And I want to welcome you to our first public event in our new education series that we're doing in collaboration with City College San Francisco. This month, special thanks go out to the University of Silicon Valley for hosting us, and Julius DeBosch for the weeks of work he spent putting together all of the speakers and logistics for this event, along with BT Gibbs and JD David. And now I want to hand you over to Julius for DAW versus DAW.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Julius DeBosch, composer, professor at the University of Silicon Valley's audio program and many other things audio. So today's topic, of course, as you know, is digital audio workstations, or DAWs, which shouldn't require much of an introduction or explanation to audio people, as some of us use them as the center of our studio, and for others, it is their studio. But I don't know if you had the same experience, but when I start talking to anyone about DAW and what DAW they use and what I use, usually the conversation pretty quickly goes into everyone defending their DAW or trying to sell the different new functions and why they stick to that, and that's the best. And so we thought that it would be interesting, sort of from an educational perspective, to look at it, whether it's because it will help you to choose a DAW for your work style, or maybe be enticed to try something new, as our 5 panelists here will show you 5 different DAWs. But ultimately, we're trying to objectively compare how efficient they are to use and what sort of practical choice they may be for different functions, for different work styles and different work types. So we believe that it's better not to be in love with the tool, but rather with the content that you're working on. So we're going to be focusing on the ease of use and not get too advanced. We'll see if everyone would like to this sort of event to continue, this event series to continue, then maybe we can also do something more advanced and involve more other different DAWs, as there are plenty of DAWs out there. So I would like to welcome our contestants, panelists, I guess, in the DAW versus DAW event. And why don't we go around and please do a quick introduction and also mention for how long you've been using the DAW that you're going to be presenting and in what capacities. Start with, I think we're starting with Phil.
Hello, my name is Phil Hawkins, and I teach at Mission College in Santa Clara, and I've been using Studio One now for about 5 years. I came from Pro Tools before that. I was a Pro Tools instructor and have switched, and yeah, so that's a little bit about what I do.
Thank you. And Matt, please.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. I'm Matt Blowstein, and I teach at Cabrillo College in the music tech program there. And I also compose music for various types of media. And I've been using Cubase for about 20 years, believe it or not. So I started working in the recording studio at the Manhattan School of Music, and we used all Steinberg products there, so Wavelab and Nuendo. And I chose Cubase because it was PC and Mac compatible and cheaper than Nuendo.
Great, thank you, Matt. Next one is Austin.
Hey everybody, my name is Austin Rowe. I am not a distinguished professor like the former 2 people that just spoke, but I am a supervising sound editor at my company KBAT. I work primarily in linear interactive media and post-production, and I do a little bit of music composition as well. But to get to the meat of the presentation here, with Logic Pro, it's the DAW I'll be demoing, and I've been using it off and on since really like 2009, so quite a while. Primarily work in Pro Tools, but I do use Logic Pro for music production still.
Thank you, Austin. And next is JD, John David.
Yeah, hi folks. My name is John David, but I go by JD. And I have been using Ableton Live as a DAW for really since 2008. I first started using it as a way to DJ, to do live performance with music tracks, and then began getting back into music production, which is something that I had studied in school and wanted to sort of learn more the modern techniques and tools. And I've been making original music and also teaching the occasional person who just wants like a one-on-one sort of getting started session, either on DJing or on using the tools, various tools, and incorporating third-party plugins into live sessions to make original music. So I don't have that much experience with film or sound for picture. In that context, my experience there was largely at Dolby and largely with Pro Tools, but some of the same concepts apply. So hopefully I'll get through that part.
Well, thank you,
It should be fun.
JD. Thank you. And next one is Eric.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric Foreman. I have been in the film industry, well, I was for 15 years or so at Skywalker Sound, and I've been at Dolby now about 7 years. My history is more audio post, but I've certainly done plenty of music as well. And Pro Tools is the devil I know. It's been almost 30 years, I hate to think. So hopefully I represent it well today. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. And just on a personal note, I think my role to be here is to be pretty unbiased, and I think I qualify, hopefully, for that role, as I'm an avid Pro Tools user, no pun intended. From the earliest days of Pro Tools, I was using Sound Designer 2 before, which was the precursor to Pro Tools. But actually, I started on Cubase on Atari ST 1040, if anyone remembers, from late 80s, running just Cubase as a sequencer. And then I switched to Digital Performer in the 90s for composition, which I found great for film composition, which is what I typically do. And then for my live performances, I exclusively use Ableton Live. And right now in my studio, I use Studio One only for monitoring. So I use different functions from different DAWs, and I try not to be too biased about towards any one of them. The way we're going to do this is we have a few tasks lined up, very different kind of tasks, and some of them are going to be very basic. Just to show you kind of the workflow, the approaches to these different DAWs, and we're going to go around the panel with the panelists, and everyone's going to show how they accomplish the same task. And so we're going to kind of take these rounds, just rotating. So let the fun begin. And let's start with just discussing what you like about your DAW in general. I'm sure that you have tried more than, as you mentioned in some of your intros, more than just one DAW. And with your experience, what would you say is the best thing about the DAW that you're using right now? Phil, please.
I guess for me, it was a combination of getting things to work quickly. So in terms of, I felt like Studio One was kind of a nice blend between Logic and Pro Tools in terms of getting instruments going immediately. I like the way they have that structured. And then also as an educator, because I have to maintain 25 workstations at my college, just the way the licensing worked and not having to use a dongle, and the fact that just the licensing and getting all the machines updated and working in a large lab with good tech support was important to me. And so that was something that that seemed to be better for me using Studio One.
Yeah, I think that's an aspect that often people don't think about, how multiple licenses you might need in a classroom. And how about you, Matt?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I really like about Cubase is that I find that it's very customizable. So I have I work off a 1,000-track template, and I can very easily have show and hide different levels of tracks, have some engaged and some disabled, and I can create like macros for strings of key commands and customize my key commands and have a media bay with track presets. And that's probably my favorite thing, is that I can, it might be at the expense of it being a little cumbersome and clunky sometimes, but you can definitely tweak it and customize it to your workflow, which I like a lot.
Matt, does Cubase still offer the like when you right click anywhere, it brings up a toolbox and you can pick your tools?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
they do that.
I remember when I was starting on Cubase, that was the thing I liked so much. And especially, you know, in the 90s when you couldn't really right click with a Mac, at least there wasn't a clicker for it on PC. It was just amazing that you don't have to move back and forth with your, you know, to change your tools, but it's wherever your cursor is, just right click and pick the tool that you need. I love that about Cubase. It's good that they have that.
Yeah, I'll demonstrate that when it's my turn. So.
Nice, great. Austin, how about Logic?
Yeah, so I think the thing with Logic is that it's sort of like maybe the opposite of what Matt was just talking about, or certainly the opposite of Pro Tools. If Pro Tools basically needs to be told literally everything you want it to do step by step, Logic makes it super easy for beginners to just kind of get in and get going really quickly. It will like assume that you want certain things that like 99% of the time you probably do if you're doing music composition and production. So I think for me, that's what initially drew me to it when I first got started, you know, back in like 2009-ish. It's just like the pure ease of use. And I still to this day for music production just find that the fact that it does assume certain things and just make it really quick to get like 5 steps done in one allows me to keep that flow. When you're kind of like in that artistic flow and you're creating something, I can kind of maintain that without getting interrupted as much, which, you know, as we all know for music is like really important, maybe less so for post-production, which is why I don't use it for that. But for music, certainly it makes it really easy to just stay in the zone, which is great.
Okay, let's see if anyone will challenge you later on that, whether Logic is the logical choice for music. Okay, thank you. JD?
Sure. So what originally attracted me to Ableton, I've been using a program called Tracks to just do sequencing before that, and was mostly using Logic. But with Ableton, the ability to quickly scale the time or pitch independently of any clip and get different music tracks to play perfectly in sync with one another was a sort of a real game changer for music performance for DJing, whether it was my own original clips or tracks that I got from other people. Being able to drag in, you know, a number of different styles of music even and get them to march to the same metronome, you might say. That's what initially, you know, kind of turned my head around. I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. Now these days, basically every DAW has some form of time stretching and ability to change pitch without changing the time scale. So those features have been replicated, but I still think that Ableton has the sort of the most intuitive and fastest way to go about that kind of transformation of the audio that you're bringing into a session. I think they've got a great collection of instruments. If you've got the suite, the addition of Max for Live, which is, you know, Max is a very powerful DSP and sequencing toolkit. It's like a programming environment with blocks that you can connect via connections in a visual interface. And there's a whole community out there of people making amazing, you know, devices and new kinds of takes on existing plugin ideas and wholly new concepts as well that are all free to use. And, you know, some people are selling them, but most of them are free. And there's just a lot of possibilities there. It's a really wide open kind of creative zone. So those are a couple things.
That's great. And
yeah.
I think we should make it clear for those of us who might be just starting out or looking at different DAWs as their first choice, that Ableton is actually the company and Live is the name of the software. Often people just say, well, I use Ableton, but that's really not the name of the software, right? So, okay. Eric and Pro Tools.
I think the Pro Tools is an industry standard for a reason. I know there's a lot of bashing out there on Twitter. I hide from it, but I find it to be stable. I think there's a reason that it is that, right? You can always rely on it. It integrates everything you need. I've certainly looked at other DAWs over the years, and they can be prettier they can do little functions and things that can be a little bit faster. But I think for the overall use of things you need, compatibility, like I said, overall stability, I think they're doing a good job of staying up with things, especially recently with aux.io and a little bit of changes with the interface. So I think there is a reason, again, it's industry standard. So overall, I'm just happy. And again, 30 years of working with something, I think there's something said to that it's hard to get out of it.
And while I can second that, you can also see what I said in the beginning, that everyone has just basically praised their choice. And we should make it clear that we're not sponsored by any of the companies who are making these DAWs, and we're not trying to sell you on anything. This is as objective of a comparison as we can offer you. But with that said, if you could add a feature that's still missing from your DAW, or change something that you dislike the most, what would that be, Phil, for you?
So I think it's something that's emerging now, which is doing surround sound and doing Dolby Atmos, and it's not really available yet for Studio One. So they don't really have surround engines. And it's something that I'm interested in moving in that direction. I think a lot of people are going that direction. So that's just me making a request to the company. Could you find a way to incorporate that into future versions? The only other thing, let's see, what else am I missing that I had before? I don't know, maybe because I'm pretty simple. I'm kind of just an analog, my DAW for me is almost like a tape machine. I mean, apart from doing mixing at the end, but as long as it's working, I don't really miss anything from like using other DAWs. So I would just say, because they started as a DAW that was kind of an add-on to their company, it wasn't really seriously a DAW in the beginning, and now it's kind of becoming that way. I think they're still kind of catching up in some of those functions and features. So that would be my comment.
Okay, thank you. Matt, what do you miss from Cubase?
Yeah, so I think what I would say wouldn't be a feature, but more, as I teach Logic and Pro Tools and Ableton, and I kind of see what, some of the features out there and the look of the different DAWs. But Cubase, I think at times could use a little help in the GUI, in the user interface, and the icons and the graphics are sometimes a bit inconsistent. Like the record button even looks different in 3 different places, and I feel like it's been updated in stages throughout the years and retained some things that could have more of an overall polished feel and look to it, similar to like Ableton or Logic, for example.
Okay, thank you. Austin, what's missing from Logic?
Yeah, so I think there's a reason why I said I use Pro Tools for post and only use Logic for music production, right? There's just so many things about Pro Tools that have become like I can't live without, and so I would never choose to do sound design or any like of the post-production processes in Logic Pro. I think just like thinking about just the edit modes as the most basic feature, I mean that like having that in Pro Tools, Logic has nothing like that. Having spot, having shuffle, having those at your disposal with just a quick like hotkey, like Logic just does not have that. So those are the kinds of things that make me only use Logic Pro for like one specific purpose.
Okay, thank you. JD?
So the kind of the biggest thing that I keep on wishing was different in live has to do with the built-in instruments. This will become more clear when I'm showing my screen to the folks who are watching, but Live's built-in instruments all appear in sort of a bar at the bottom of the screen. They've tried really hard to make almost everything you need to do visible in a single window, which, there's something to be said for that. You don't have a lot of floating windows kind of getting in the way of one another, and everything's kind of right there. But it's at the bottom of the screen, and I often find myself like hunching over to look at these very small controls and just wishing I could make the whole thing, bigger or bring it up to the top of the screen so my neck was at a more comfortable angle. It seems like a little thing, but after a while, it's sort of an ergonomic challenge. They have some of the built-in instruments are starting to have like an expandable interface where it expands up into the sort of arrangement portion of the screen, and that helps a lot. Most plugins that you would use are going to be in a separate floating window, and you can resize them to your heart's content, and the kind of overall graphic interfaces, there's a lot more flexibility there. Live has kind of a constrained aesthetic that basically hides a lot of features in the built-in instruments. You have to like click on multiple places to reveal certain parts of for example, the analog modeled synthesizer. There's like really 8 different screens that you get, but you have to know to click on certain parts of the interface to make those individual screens pop up. It just seems a little less intuitive, so that's kind of a weak point.
I would totally agree with that. When I started on live and being used to many different DAWs before, that was my biggest challenge, to get used to the interface and how to access things easily. And of course, live users tell you that it's just about getting used to it, but still, I agree that could be a nice improvement.
Logic, I gotta say, Logic has the most beautiful collection of built-in instruments. I think they're just like they've gone to town with the art and making them really kind of cool and fun to use. So, nod to Logic on that.
Eric, how about Pro Tools? What's missing from Pro Tools?
Well, I wasn't going to say missing as much as the biggest problem that still seems to be an issue is the video engine. It's very finicky in that sense of you have to feed it one format really, otherwise everything else it's going to cough at. And that being such a regular thing, and I think that inherently is the issue with it being such an older, stable platform, is that it has some old code that probably is unfixable in some ways. I think the other thing that relates to that is the depth of functionalities in this. As great as it is as things are being added on, the complexity of it, thinking about new users, I say this all the time, the overhead of figuring everything out has got to be huge. If I didn't already have so much understanding, and then seeing I'm just looking at the newest interfaces, and I guess all of DAWs really are going that way as computers get more powerful. But the complexity of figuring everything out, the menus, things like that, I would love to see some, redraw of all of this so that it maybe is a little more straightforward.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? It's kind of ironic that Pro Tools is used in post-production so much, and the video engine, you would expect that that's a crucial part of that. But even when Avid switched to drop the whole QuickTime engine and started using their own Avid engine, it didn't make things better, if maybe even worse than it was. So I would agree that would be a really nice improvement to have a good engine there. Great. So the last quick run of answers from this question is kind of our last, and then we're going to start working with what this does. But every DAW has a reputation. Someone mentioned, what people say on Twitter, and there are different sort of long-standing gripes that people have with certain DAWs or their companies that make them. What do you think is an unfair part of your DAW's reputation that you would like to convince people that it's actually not fair? Phil?
Well, first of all, still, when I tell people that I use Studio One, many people have not heard of it. So I think maybe it's just kind of a lesser known in general. And then to kind of dovetail with that, they think maybe it's just not a serious DAW. Mm-hmm. But it's been great for me. I like the workflow. And the truth is that when you work on the files and when you create a great, mix, or when you're doing a session, the client doesn't really care what DAW you're using as long as you're getting the job done and they like the results. So I think it hasn't really reached its full legitimacy yet, maybe, or just not as known. But I haven't really heard people say necessarily negative things. I just think it's still kind of unknown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matt, how about Cubase?
Yeah, so a few things I've heard. I'm not sure if this is still like the consensus as far as its reputation, but I've heard some people say that it's mostly used in Europe, and that may be true, or it might be more popular there, but I know that a lot of it's used extensively in Hollywood by a lot of film score composers, and Nuendo particularly because of its integration with middleware is used a lot in the game audio industry. And I'd also say, I've heard a lot of people that are aware that Cubase has pretty advanced MIDI and MIDI editing features, but I would also say that what might be overlooked is all the audio editing features that also are, I'd say, equally on par with the MIDI editing features as well.
And as we mentioned, Cubase really started with MIDI only. It was a sequencer 40 years, or not 40, but 35 years ago. And I think it has kept that reputation on the positive side. And I also have come across where some people were surprised that you can do decent audio in Cubase. Like, it's a DAW, right?
Exactly.
Austin, how about Logic?
Yeah, as long as we're talking about hot takes on Twitter, I think the ones that you typically find that surrounds Logic are that it's kind of like baby's first DAW in a way. And I think it gets that reputation for two reasons. Maybe like one, because like, back in like 2007, 2008, 2009, like, yes, it definitely didn't have like as many features as you would have wanted it to have, and it was like pretty unstable. But also I think a lot of people do kind of graduate, from like first getting into music production from maybe like GarageBand, like, because it comes for free, and then they like kind of like, oh cool, I'll go off to like Logic Pro, and it's kind of like a natural progression for them, and so it does have this like reputation as this beginner DAW. But in 2022, I mean, I think what we're probably going to find from this panel and this whole exercise is that like most DAWs can do most things. It may be slightly faster in one, and maybe slightly faster in another, but most things are possible in most DAWs at this point, and Logic Pro is definitely gotten to a place where you can do a lot of very interesting things very quickly. I still stand by what I said for like the fact that I wouldn't use it for post, but like for all of the things, like it's pretty great. And even for posts, like I do like some of the stuff that they're starting to come out with. I mean, it's very accessible to get into surround or like even like immersive mixing with Logic these days for basically for free when you compare it to something like Avid's approach. So for that, I do think that it does still kind of carry that stink to it that it had from maybe like over a decade ago. But I do think these days it's a little unfairly placed. But your mileage may vary.
Thank you. JD?
Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. Yeah, one thing that I see come up in conversations about live, there's kind of two things. One more general, which is that there's some intuitive or lack of intuitiveness that could be addressed. And some people just have a hard time kind of like getting their head around how the workflow is supposed to go. That I think is mostly a matter of exposure, and the built-in tutorials that Ableton provides with the software are actually very good. They walk you through step by step. They give you sample sessions of various different types, whether you want to record or you want to make MIDI tracks and things like that. The other kind of knock that I hear a lot is that it's not very workable for doing surround sound. And that is actually something that was addressed not with this current version, but with the version before in Live 10. There's a surround panner, and it's actually pretty straightforward to set up to 8-channel layout of loudspeakers and pan in an XY manner through that field. That is provided with the suite, so it's not something that comes with the default like base version of the software, and it's not something that comes with the light versions that are included with when you buy a MIDI controller or things like that. But if you get the full suite, you get the surround panner, and it works quite handily. So that makes that a lot more straightforward.
Okay. Eric, Pro Tools has a love mixed reputation, depending on who you ask, right? What do you think?
Yeah, right. So many people complain about its stability. I don't feel that way. I think if you know some of the rules, like we talked about the video thing, to avoid yeah, I don't know. I read a lot of crying about that, and I'm just, it certainly crashes like anything. But I haven't had in many years any loss of any real work. So I kind of wonder what people are doing out there. I'm open to hearing it.
Sometimes what I hear, especially from students and those who are new to especially making music, is that Pro Tools is not really a good program for composition or for making, assembling songs. And would you agree with that?
Totally. I would agree with that. The MIDI, I mean, it's gotten better, right? You can now open the MIDI window, and there are certainly some quirks to it. And I don't think it's the best composition tool. But what can be, the fact that you can bring up instruments pretty quickly and you can have all that set up, you can edit MIDI data pretty efficiently. I'm not a composer by trade, so I don't, do a ton of that, but I certainly have done enough of it, and I play with MIDI, and I think the functionality is there. And again, like I said, there's quirks to it, but if you want, if you're doing composition all day, there certainly are better options.
It's interesting. In the past few years, I developed a workflow where I sketch out my compositions at home, bring them into the studio, and work out the details and design the sounds later. And actually, I'm running Pro Tools at home, so I've done more MIDI work that I ever imagined I would do in Pro Tools, and it took me a while to get used to it, but I didn't find anything that would really hold me back. So that's really interesting too. That the functions might be there in some of these cases, but it just takes much more practice, really, and time to be comfortable with them and then start using them. Okay, so Phil, would you please share your desktop with us? And we're gonna start going through tasks, starting with very simple, basic tasks, just so we all can see what the DAW looks like and what kind of the workflow is. So our first task is I'm asking the panelists to create 6 stereo audio tracks and 3 stereo effect aux channels and the master channel. And then from the audio tracks, just send the audio at -6 dB to the auxes. Imagine that those are effect auxes. See how this set up, how easy it is.
Okay, everyone see the screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and create a session. I think we're doing eventually 48K, correct?
Sure.
So, this is the kind of session setup screen. One of the things, since we're here, I like that you can set up some of these things. This song length actually will pre-set a start and end marker on the whole session, which of course you can change later, but it's kind of cool that you can do that from the beginning. So yeah, I'm just going to create some audio tracks. I'll just type in 6. And unlike Pro Tools, I can only create one type of track at a time. So I'm going to do those audio tracks first. I'm going to switch over to this view, and then you wanted some effects tracks, so I'm going to add some of those. And then I'm going to maximize this mixer view. And if I wanted to send all of these tracks over to these effects channels, I would probably shift-click them, go to the sends, and then I can just go like this. And it's defaults to -6 on the send level. So if you look at these, they're already at -6.
Oh, I should have asked for -7.2 or something.
Well, obviously I could do the same thing, right? So I can just shift click, and then with each effect send, I can change the level, So that's basically it for creating the tracks, creating effect sends to those buses.
So these are not groups. You're just with shift, you're changing the send level for the same slot basically throughout all the selected tracks.
Yeah, I haven't actually created a group. Obviously, I could do that as well, but I'm just doing it this way. And it's nice too, like if you did, You know, if you wanted to, if you're like sometimes in a mastering session, I want to just throw up the same EQ on all the stereo files. I can just select them all and do it that way as well. So it's kind of a quick way to just add either an insert or a send.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Let's move on to Matt's Cubase.
All right, so let me share my desktop here and Cubase. All right, so I'm going to just start with an empty project here. So the stereo at the master is created by automatically. But if I come here in my tracks area and I right click, did you say six audio tracks?
6 stereo audio tracks, yeah.
Audio tracks, okay. I usually like to put these above my master. And then
3 stereo auxes.
3 stereo, so they're called effect tracks in Cubase. We can add those in there, and I'll just put those right down there. Yeah, so if I look at my mixer here, I could, if I select all of my audio tracks and hold down Option and Shift, it enables what's called Quick Link, which is kind of like a temporary group for whatever I have selected. So I can go ahead and say send those to FX1 and turn that on, and then I'll send them over to FX2 and send them over to FX3. And then I can type in here, do we say -6?
Yep.
And again, I'm just keeping Option and Shift down all the time, and then I have that Quick Link enabled. And everything that's selected is going to go ahead and apply those settings.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
pretty efficient.
Yeah.
Thank you. Austin.
Cool, let's do it. Share screen here. Boom, cool. All right, so this is just the default window that opens up when you first open up Logic, which created a session, and this is what it spits out. Same deal as what you just saw. It's going to automatically give you a stereo out. You don't have to worry about that. And let's go ahead and just make 6 audio tracks. Go ahead and create those. You'll see those got created there on the left. Let's pull up our mixer, and it's the same deal as what you just saw. Move this out of the way so you can see. I kind of have like a faux group. Now now that they're all selected, anything I do on one is going to affect the other, which is really easy. So I can go ahead and make them stereo by clicking this button here. They're on mono right now. So now they're all stereo, which is great. And then we want 3 auxes. And so the nice thing about Logic is you can just kind of go ahead and it'll automatically make them for you as you start sending. So you can do that. And then one more. And then we want -6 for all of them. So what we would do is just go through, just like what you've been seeing, just -6 for all 3. And then boom, good to go.
Great. Simple as that. JD, show us Ableton, please. How different it looks.
The spreadsheet of DAWs.
JD? Looks like JD can't.
No,
Oh, you can hear
pulling it
us.
up here. Is that, you should see it now, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I already had these tracks from before, so I'll make new ones. Basically, if you're making an audio track, you just say Command T, and you can make some of those. If you want to make MIDI tracks, I don't think you asked for any MIDI tracks, but just as an example, that's what the MIDI track would look like. See some differences here. Why don't I change the zoom on the display, because it's a little hard to see. I'm going to go with a lighter profile and zoom everything in a little bit. Okay, is that a little bit more readable? So it's a little goofy now, but resizing that. The details of which track is doing what can be seen down here in this region of the screen here, whether it's audio or MIDI. There's already 2 return channels by default, but I'll just blow those away. Just delete them so you can see what's like to make new ones. That you press Option and Command T, and you can make return tracks like that. By default, all the return tracks will have a send available on every channel that's in the session. So you don't really choose whether or not you can have A, B, and C here. They all show up. If I made more, more would show up there. So to set the level, I actually prefer that to do that in the arrangement view. So I'm pressing the tab key now. That switches from this so-called session view where you have clips you can trigger in kind of a vertical workflow to more of a conventional horizontal left-to-right workflow. There you can type in the value you want. If you want -6, you can type that in. You can do that for everything. If I had set this first in one track and then duplicated the track, then they would all be matching and it'd be a little less tedious than what I'm doing right now.
What if so how can you do it after you set up all the tracks and the sends and you just want to change the send level on all of them at the same time? Is that possible?
Maybe it is. I'm not sure. I mean, you can select multiple tracks at a time and do various things with them. Like you could group them all and stuff like that, but I don't know how you would actually like populate every little field here with a -6. Is there a shortcut that somebody knows? I don't know.
Yeah, that I don't know either.
Yeah. They probably figured.
Okay.
So
So if you have a bunch of different sends on a track, then since it's more of a circular graphic that shows your send level,
yeah,
is it gonna keep sort of you can lose the from the height of your view if you look at your mix view? So basically, let's say you have nine sends, then that's gonna stack up pretty high there, right?
Yeah, if I had more send tracks, yeah, they will. It starts to fill in this region. You can choose whether you want to see them all the time or not by clicking this over here on the right here. Let's get rid of this thing. Whether you want to see the sends, whether you want to see the returns, you can kind of show and hide that kind of stuff. If you want to hide the I/O routing, you can basically get it set up and then hide that. It's often not used that frequently. Mixer, that's pretty much always up for me. If you expand the height here of the mixer, you get sort of a more detailed view, better precision for like how loud you're setting things to be. I tend to have the returns available, but I can take them all and make them a bit narrower by like selecting them all at once and then making any one of them narrower, kind of scoop them off to the side.
Okay, thank you.
Crossfader shows up like that.
Great. Cool. Eric, how does Pro Tools handle all this? Oh, Jay, can you quit sharing so Eric can show us Pro Tools? Thank you.
Okay, you guys got me?
Yep.
All right, so I just have a blank session here. I would create new, I'm just doing the shortcuts for new tracks. I do 6 audio tracks and a master fader, which there are scroll throughs. Oops, actually, what do I want to do? This master fader. That would be stereo. For the sends, I'm going to hit shift and option and just send those all out. Let's say aux1, same for those are aux2, aux3. And then I guess the most efficient way to get them all to do the same thing is to group them. You can either do this as a global or as an individual. This was pre-set up because I was playing with it before, but I would, control the A through C there. So with them being grouped, anything I'm going to do to that one, it was -6, all right. So if I set that up at 3, that didn't work. Did I get that right? That should group. Let's see if that's working. Not working. App happened to my group? Oh, it's on follow globals. Let's make sure I did that right. Attributes, controls. Oh, it should be volume. So we go back here. So -6. And let's check. Whoa, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? My group is on. Oh, there we go. All right, so that's working there. I don't know why it's not working here. Maybe it's just a grouping error. Maybe there's a Pro Tools glitch, bitch thing there. -6. And down the line. That's how I do it.
Okay, so in Pro Tools' defense, we should maybe mention that the whole follow global is like you can set it up in two different ways where everything just follows the rule that you define first, or you can set up like special rules if you want certain tracks and grouping to behave differently. So it's kind of the one time you set it, it looks a little bit messy, but then you can forget about it and just use it. Okay. Thank you. So the next simple task, and these are very simple tasks, but as you can see, everyone goes about it differently, and there's not one right or wrong way of doing it as long as you can accomplish. So the next thing is that we're gonna set all the sends to pre-fader sends, and then I would ask the panelists to zoom into the area between 1 minute and 1 minute 30 seconds on their timeline. So basically what we would like to see on your screen is how easily you can get to the area that's between 1 minute and 90 seconds. And also please change all your sends to pre-fader sends. Phil? And you're muted.
There we go. How's that? Do you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So yeah, I'll do the pre-fader first because it's kind of the same process really, which is that I can just go up here and just click on those. And now all of those sends are pre-fader. So that's how I would do the pre-fader send. And then in terms of zooming in on the timeline, I'm gonna, sorry, I gotta move things around here. I'm going to switch to seconds. And then you said like between 1 and 130, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I can simply make a timeline selection between 1 and 130. Let me just get a little closer here. And then if I just go Option F, it'll zoom into that zone, which I gotta confess, or can I'll just tell you that one of the options, or one of the things I like about Studio One, is that you go to the keyboard shortcuts here. Can you see this this
Yes.
window that I popped up?
Yep.
And you can choose a mapping scheme for other DAWs. So because I'm coming from being a Pro Tools user, most of the time I use Pro Tools shortcuts. So if you come from that world, or if you're coming from another world, you can actually use Cubase or Logic. So just if you're used to that, zooming in that way with Option F, those kinds of keyboard shortcuts will be very familiar to you.
That's
So
great. And I'm sure Eric is happy to hear that you're using the Pro Tools shortcut.
I'm gonna use the Studio One shortcut for another task, but that's what I'm using most of the time because that's what I'm used to.
Okay, great. Thank you. Matt, how do you do this in Cubase?
All right, so it's pretty much the same as what Phil did. So here in my mixer, if I hover next to the power button for the ascends, there's a switch to make them pre or post fader. So if I select them all, and then again I quick link with Option and Shift, I can just click that button, and now they become pre fader. And then as far as zooming in, it's really the same thing. So if and here's I think what you were talking about, Julius. When I right click with my mouse, I can switch between my tools. So I have my range selection here. And if I'm on seconds and set my grid to 1 second, I can just select between 1 minute and 1 minute 30. And then I programmed a key, the number 3 will zoom to that selection. So now, filling my screen here, I have between 1 minute and 1 minute 30.
So you preset that?
I did, yeah. It's I'm not exactly sure what that key command is. Let's see, the number 3, zoom tracks 3. It's here, zoom to selection. Yeah, is what it's called. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty efficient.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you, Austin.
Cool. Let's do it. Let's get this thing out of the way here. All right, so we're back in Logic. Let's do the pre-fader sends first. So we're gonna press X to open up the mixer. And we're back where we were before. And now it's the same deal as kind of what you just saw. It's really easy. You can just click on each bus send here and just go to pre-fader. And as long as I have selected all of the tracks that I want to augment, then it's gonna do it for me, which is great. And then as far as zooming in, so Logic Pro has this function where you can basically press Command and have a secondary mouse function at any time. If I hold Command, you can see my mouse kind of changes. And so it makes a lot of sense to kind of keep it on like pointer for your primary mouse. And then up here, you can actually change your secondary tool when you press Command. And if I go and press the Zoom tool, that's like a really easy way to zoom really easily. So as far as zooming in on a certain amount of time, I would just take my playhead here, and I'm watching up here. As you can see, that the time code is telling me that's about 1 minute. And just like for another feature, just really quick, I mean, we could pull up, we could make like a marker really quick if I wanted to like remember that, or I could change the ruler to actually show seconds, but I could just do that really quick and then come over here, and then there looks like 1 minute 30 right there. And then I have a good idea right there. I'm gonna press Command, switch to my zoom tool, and I can basically just click and highlight whatever I want to zoom in on. And so if I know that's about where I want to zoom in on, I can just release, and there we go. Now we're seeing between 1 minute and 1 minute 30.
Okay, not too bad. And by the way, I think these are such important things that people often overlook when they're looking at new DAWs. They're curious what plugins it comes with and whatever. But how often do we have to zoom in and zoom out, and how much time does it add up to when you're going through like a post-production, I think, when you're zooming in and out all the time? So I think the efficiency of these is I would think it's crucial for a special professional user. Great. Thank you, JD. Please show us the screen zoom in Ableton.
Sure. Yeah, I'm getting the hang of the turning on and off the video. Let's see here. Boom. Back to live. Boom. Here it is. So I just thought I'd show one trick. If I've highlighted all the tracks here, and then I change one of the send levels, it'll change them for all. So if I set them all to -6, efficiently that way. The control for deciding if they're going to be pre or post fader is over here on the right under the master heading for A, B, and C. You can change them to pre fader like that if you so choose. For example, for a performer who wants to monitor what they're doing. If I want to zoom in on a section, moving the cursor up to this upper bar here in the arrangement view allows pretty quick, easy zooming in and out. Another way to do it, if you've got a clip that lasts for, say, the 30 seconds we're talking about, that I can make a new MIDI track like. regardless, you can see the time marker here. The shortcut I'm not remembering right now, but to make a new empty clip of a certain length, you can highlight that region and well, anyway, that's basically right up to the 30-second mark here.
Okay.
Is that what you're hoping for?
Yeah. So I think most of us use the kind of the ruler and being pretty kind of good and precise with your mouse, and then looking at the timeline, right, to see how far you're zooming in. I think Ableton users are very comfortable with that. I would say that took me a while to get used to, the whole zooming in live.
If you have a clip and you know it's a certain length and you just want to zoom in on that, you can right-click it like I just did and say zoom to time selection, and it'll pop it open like that. So that's kind of handy.
Cool. Great. Thank you.
That's back to where you were.
Great. Eric, please show us the same in Pro Tools.
Okay. Share screen. So one thing I really like about Pro Tools is there are different ways, many ways to skin a cat. Everybody has their things. Well, first, let's see. I mean, with the aux thing, that's a little more straightforward. I would just shift click all my channels, option, click that. I'm holding shift and option, and I want those all to be in pre for each one. That'd be the fastest way I would do that. As far as the zoom option, I'm one of the rare people that I know of that use this functionality, but it's one of my favorite things actually. Pro Tools is this zoom toggle. I live and die by this, and it drives some people crazy because of the way it functions. But for the knowing what the question is here, I would preset this slightly different than the way I use it. I'm choosing the fit to window. I usually just do large because I like to zoom in on what I'm working on. But for this question, I would just put that at fit to window. And so if I'm choosing, and maybe even a better way to see this, so I put these at small. I choose my point. I think you said 1 minute. I would choose it there on a track. Oh, let me take the group off. And I would hit the E key, and that's going to zoom in at that specific spot. And I just, with that one key, anywhere I go, you know, if I go to 2 minutes or something like that, same thing, and I can zoom that fast.
It's a little bit different approach than what we saw in Studio One or Cubase, right? And would you agree that Pro Tools has a lot of modifier keys, so it might be especially good for users who are comfortable with not looking at their keyboard, but using those modifier keys that gives you a lot of extra functions?
Not looking at the keyboard. What you meaning shortcuts?
Yeah, basically shortcuts or the modifier keys. When you're holding shift and option, then it's applied only to the selected tracks, and if you're holding option, it applied to all tracks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the shortcuts are deep, and you know, and that's good and bad, right? Because I was thinking about this. I was thinking about showing the mix window part of the sends, and I know there's a way to show like the meter levels of the aux sends, but I never use it, and I was like, oh, I don't even remember how to do it because it's so deep, and I can't figure out. Maybe it's in here, and some of you folks might use it, you know, more regularly, and that's what I mean about the depth. I mean, there are so many ways to do it, and that's great. You know, we get in our grooves, and we there's things we like and don't like about certain things. You know, Kip and I were talking about this yesterday, and it's like it's a great practice to dig in and learn new things because there are so many. We get stuck in our ways, and there's a lot to learn.
Yeah, I found that in some of these DAWs that we have seen here, they're almost like more mouse centric, and you can find those functions by clicking different places in the interface. While in Pro Tools, you have to rely sometimes on these modifier keys or shortcuts, because the functions are all there and it's just a different way of thinking about it. Maybe it's not as much on the interface with the mouse, but you will have to use both of your hands to get to them. But then it's really deep in there and you can decide how you go about it.
Yeah, true.
Great, thank you. Okay, so for our next task, let's make it a little bit more exciting by bringing in some audio. I shared a short audio clip from an ambient music piece that has a ugly pop right in the middle that we would like to edit out. So what I would ask of our panelists to please import that file that I shared with you in the beginning of this presentation and show us how you go about it, editing out this this ugly click. Phil, please.
All right. So, can you hear me okay? I
Yes.
want to make sure. Cool. So I'm just going to get the file, which is file A, I think. And I'm just grabbing that and dragging it on the screen. So here's the file. And should I play it through, or do we know right where the...
We can play, I guess we can play it through once so that everyone gets familiar with it.
Okay.
And the panelists, by the way, have not practiced. They have not heard this file before. I shared with them right in the beginning of this this presentation, so that wouldn't make a difference how much they have worked on it or not.
And just because I can, I know that in Pro Tools there's a way you can use the scroll wheel on the mouse to zoom in and out. And there is actually something like that in Studio One. If you just grab up here on the time bar, I can actually go this way to scroll quickly in and out, which is, I use a lot actually. So yeah, that's a nice feature. All right.
It's hard to miss, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we can see here. I'm going to go ahead and just make this a little bit bigger so we can see very clearly where that is. So I'm using kind of like a multi-tool here. And so it kind of changes its function depending on where you are. This is kind of a selector. Here it's more of a grabber. So I would probably, let me get out of grid mode. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut that. And I guess you said it's because it's ambient, it's okay if I don't worry about the time.
Yes. Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead and look for the waveform to be similar in terms of phase. Pull that over, and then I'm just going to hit the letter X, and it's going to create a crossfade. So let's make sure that I got this right. Yeah, sounds like we got it.
Yep.
So that's how I would edit out that pop.
Great. That was fast and easy. Thank you.
Yep.
Matt, how do you do this in Cubase?
All right, so to import the audio, I could either use the menu or just drag and drop. All right, so let's see. So it looks like it's right about there. Right. So I'm just using my scroll wheel with my mouse to zoom in. One thing I might do, maybe try something different from what Phil did. If I turn off my grid, and I have a snap to zero crossing here. So if I hold down my option key, I can change, kind of like in Logic, I can change to my scissors here. And wherever I cut is going to be at a zero crossing. So if I cut in one of those spots, we shouldn't hear a pop if we suture these back together. So I can turn snap back on and say snap to events. So if I pull this, it's going to just kind of glue itself right to the previous event. And let's see if that went away. it seemed to work.
Nice. So not even a crossfade.
Sorry?
So not even a crossfade. You don't need to do
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary if we're crossing at 0 there. There's not going to be a click. So, yeah.
Nice. Great. Thank you. Austin.
Cool. Let's see how Logic does it. So same deal. So you just saw, you can kind of just drag a file in to import it. We could also just formally import it if we want, but just drag it there. It'll actually create a track for you. Let's go ahead and find it. Let's turn this down so our ears are okay. Boom, there it is. Loud and clear, and we can even see it. And just like you've been seeing before, just go ahead and cut around it. I'm gonna press Command T, and actually it's just gonna split the audio. We can get it a little closer. Just take that out. Let's take it out here. Just get rid of that. And then, yeah, I could go ahead and try and basically get as close as possible. And then I can press T to bring up my mouse options to change my tool that I'm using. Alternatively, I could do what I did before and set myself up. If I knew I was going to be doing a lot of fading, I could set up my secondary mouse tool to fade, and then press Command, and I can just kind of like do any kind of crossfade I want over that, and it should be just fine. Excuse me. Okay, so we didn't get enough of it. So let's go ahead and just take a little bit more of that out. And then just do a longer fade. Huh. That's peculiar. I was just doing this before and it was working fine.
The fade might be too long.
Maybe. Do that again. This might be one of those failings of Logic. There. Cool.
Okay. What do you think about the zero crossing selection in Cubase?
I wish I had that in Logic, as you can see.
That's pretty neat, right?
That would have been great, yeah.
Okay. Cool. JD, you're up with live.
Boom, boom. So the file, actually, I already have it in the project folder. Sorry, this is file A. Actually, I don't have it there. Now I do. You would basically bring that in, kind of similar to the other DAWs, where you can drop it on a track and zoom in. If you want to look at the waveform in more detail, you can open up this view down here and see really where things are happening. One thing, a lot of this zooming in and out, I'm just doing with pinch gestures on a trackpad. So I find the trackpad really valuable. That's just a side note. Is this it here? I think it's kind of loud. Why don't we back off on the volume?
I think it's the wrong file.
Oh, okay. It's not file A. It's the one DAW versus DAW sample.
Yes, it
Okay,
should be.
Yeah.
It should be file A.
Okay. Well, the one that I downloaded from the chat is this one here. It's called file A. But you don't think that's the right file? I'm really confused. Is this not the click that we were looking at before?
Can you play that back again?
Sure. Sorry, it was way loud before I backed off. 14 dB on the volume.
Maybe you need to solo that track.
I think that's probably a good idea too, because you can play everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's better.
Yeah. So if this is highlighted here, I'll see a corresponding highlight for that chunk of time in this display here. You can find that same moment. Also, you can make these as tall as you want if you're looking for something like that. Sometimes a little hard to find what corresponds to the same area. here. Okay, it's way out here. Ah, that's what it is. I would probably do something similar where I can put the cursor sort of right on that spot, turning off the grid behavior, put it right there, and split the files in two. You can drag a little bit off of it. Now, something, if I really wanted to preserve the timing, and I didn't want to change, how that looked, I could open up each clip individually. Now this basically looks like two different files to the software, and down below here, I could zoom right in on the region where I'm cutting off here, put a warp marker like here, and then another one here, and then just stretch that little chunk of the audio past the point this little playhead marks where it's going to start to pick up the second clip. And then I've got like a little bit more audio that I can play with there. I can actually pull it out there, and pull it a little further. You can see the changes happening here too, until I get basically as close as I can, and then join the files up here, something like that. If you have two files selected, two clips selected in the arrangement view, you can press Command Option F, and it'll create a crossfade for you. The crossfade looks very slim. You can actually make it as wide as you like by pulling these little handles out here, or maybe move the whole thing left to right. So if it's too far in either direction, you can see that little clip popping back up. But what we have it right now should actually work pretty well. Listen. Still soloed. Still there a little bit. I think maybe I could probably a little bit more aggressive, and perhaps also chop it out of this clip too, which I didn't do before. Again, I'm going to leave the play stop marker there, add warp markers to the file, warp that split second of audio so that it occurs after the transition to playhead, and then I think that'll probably help. That's pretty clean. So, is that all making sense?
Yeah, it's pretty different logic, right, than what we have seen from other DAWs. So
Your approach.
yeah.
Mostly, what I would want to do with this is I would probably bring it into something like RX and use a D-Click. That's an isotope software. I know in Logic, one of the first things they have you do when you're setting up the software is choose a separate program to be a waveform editor. You're doing like waveform level edits. It's a little tricky. It's not like sample level editing like you sometimes would have in like SoundForge and stuff like that. That's something I wish you could do more easily in live.
Mm-hmm.
Just draw the waveform the way you want it.
Yeah.
You'd find a nice smooth curve, just sketch it in there, just sketch right over that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Eric, let's see how this is done in Pro Tools.
Okay. I would do the same drag and drop. I think this is fairly new with Pro Tools creating a track like that. I mean, maybe a few years, but I love that. But of course we can do the traditional, import file. Another way of looking at this, I'm using that EQ functionality that, we can all edit stuff, but I thought something we could try with this is I'm in grid mode, and that's making that. Try to sample base. I don't know if the other DAWs have this, right, where I can draw this baby out.
That's what I was wishing for.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So like.
Oh yeah.
And something this small, that would be my initial approach. Oops. Let's see if that works. Looks good. I hit E again. I think that brings me out to my shortcut. Oh, am I not hearing my outputs like that? Sorry, guys. I changed my busing. Let's just make this go out. I think that was the spot. That's one way of doing it. I can also show the editing if that's what you want to focus on.
No, I think it's about the most efficient way of taking out something like this, and I mean that's pretty cool to redraw the waveform. We should probably mention that is destructive editing, though it doesn't create a new file, but it makes the change in the original file. So if you misdraw it, then you can undo it, but if you don't catch it, then later you can't go back and change it.
Right.
Yeah.
And and knowing that, another good thing you can do is just an option drag and do it on that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I believe that will not affect.
Actually, it would still make the change in the same file. It would have to make an actual copy of the not just the clip of the file.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is just as easy as doing something like a duplicate, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you. Okay, our next task is imagine that you have an idea, musical idea that you would like to quickly and very efficiently put down and record into your DAW as a MIDI file, and then you decide, oh, I think this works for me, just a musical note, and you would like to turn that into audio. So can you please show us how you go about recording some just quick MIDI sort of a MIDI clip, just an idea, can be anything, and then how can you actually record that into audio or render it into an audio file?
Okay, I think I'm back. Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Cool. So I'm gonna go to my browse window here, and you can actually go through these instruments libraries. And I've kind of cheated a little bit, and I created a folder here in the file library where I have a couple of instruments that I knew I could just pop into this. So you can take any instrument that you particularly like, and you can put it into a customized folder so that you can just grab it and just drag it into your session. And it's already configured just the way that you want it to be. So this is just a generic piano keyboard sound. And now that I have that in here, I'm going to just move away from this sound. I'm actually going to switch to the Studio One keyboard shortcuts just for a moment. And I'm doing this because I wanted to demonstrate the idea of being able to create something with no keyboard attached. So in the Studio One keyboard shortcuts, if you hit the caps lock, it actually opens up a QWERTY keyboard. So I will use that to get my little idea going here. Let's see. Wow, I'm really slow. Not the most responsive thing in the world, but I got the chords in there. So maybe I want to go ahead and just kind of get this thing so that it's lined up. And I'm going to go back to here and switching back to my. So with it all selected, I can just open up this little quantize menu here. And basically, I think I was just playing footballs. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that on there, and that should line this up a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So then, if this is the idea that I think is going to change the world, then all I have to do is right-click it, go to Event, and then bounce to a new track. So there it is as audio. It's automatically muted, the MIDI track that I created that on. I can also go to this track and I can disable the track to free up any CPU, especially on a little laptop like this. So when I play this back, you're going to be hearing the audio now. And then, of course, I could do whatever I want to with that. Is that cool?
Yeah, it's great. And as you would expect in 2022, offline bounce is fast, so you can just print it. Really
That's very nice.
great. Thank you. Cubase, Matt.
All right, so what I'll do here is pretty similar to what Phil showed. So I have a bunch of my track presets here, and I'm going to just pull up one of the instruments made by Steinberg here called Hallion, which is like a sample-based instrument. And here we have a piano sound. And if I press Command K, I think I stole that shortcut from Logic. I also have a typing keyboard here if I don't have a MIDI controller with me, right? So I can arrow down octaves. So I'm going to go ahead and hit record. There we go. Okay. And I'll get rid of my keyboard. And so I have like my numeric keypad set to different quantized values. So you can see up here, I might have played a 16th note in there. So if I hit Q, that'll quantize that. And then I have a macro that I made. So if I hit the letter T, it's gonna basically cut my MIDI file to just the closest measure. So I don't have that empty measure at the beginning. So when I render this, I don't have some silence. So to render this to audio, I just type Command R. And then I have this pop-up menu where I have some options. I can render it dry, or with my channel settings, if I have some plugins and I want to include that in my sound. And I can also go all the way to including my master effects. Like if I want to include some compression or EQ I have on my master bus as well. And then I can say if I want a tail at the end, and if I want to keep the original track or have it muted. So I'll go ahead and render, and there you go. There we have it in audio form.
Great. That's pretty efficient.
Yeah.
Thank you. Austin.
Alrighty. So
Pressure is on because everyone expects Logic to make it super easy, right? Because it's
oh man, oh
music
no,
production.
we have to make a hit right now. Okay, let's do it. So let's just create a new track, and we can just select software instrument. Really easy, boom, done. And then we can go over here and select which virtual instrument we want. First one that pops up is my handy dandy Prophet 5 emulation that we all know and love. And if you don't, definitely look it up, it's amazing. And same deal as what you just saw, actually, Command K. He took the words right out of my mouth. Brings up a little musical keyboard here, which makes it easy if you don't have like a controller or anything like that you want. We can go ahead and just press record. Actually, just make sure this is not super loud so we don't kill anybody. Who knows what'll come out. So just in the interest of time, there's one chord for you, and what we can do is then bounce that in place. And there's a button for that right here. So in Logic, you have this kind of like advanced, quote unquote, advanced menu that you can drop down right here, this toolbar. And then you can go to bounce regions. And so we're just gonna click that. And you got a few options here. You can title it whatever you want. MIDI shenanigans. And then we can decide whether we want to leave the tail in. Let's say we did. In this case, we want that reverb. We can just press OK. And that'll go ahead and do its thing. And then wouldn't you know it, there it is. There's our lovely little chord there. So pretty quick and easy.
Cool. Great. Thank you. JD.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Let me get this sharing back up here. All right, here we are. So a couple ways you can go about something like this. I'll blow this away since I was experimenting with it before. But if I want to make a new clip on any of the tracks in the arrangement view, one way to do it is to enable that track to record. Sorry, these Zoom windows are right over the key controls. Here we go. You can arm that track to record and just hit the record button at the top and it'll work. Another way to go about it, though, that's kind of more unique to live, or it's not totally unique, it's one of the things that they were innovative about. If you pick a track and you arm it to record, you might notice that the little clip markers here change from what would be normally a play-pause arrow like that to a little round record head. And I can set a certain amount of count in, say 1 bar if I like. I actually do have a MIDI controller here, so I can play that. It'll count off and I need to change the audio back to Zoom so y'all can hear it. Then it'll come in and I can start playing. And when I'm done, I just click that button again and it'll automatically start looping that clip. So here we go. I missed the end. Just barely missed making an exact 4-bar loop, but that's okay. I can just pull that loop. I want to make that into audio. Always go like that. You choose to freeze the track. You can record it into another track, like this audio track here. I can set the I/O to resampling, and that's going to basically record whatever's going out the master bus. It could be bounced down your entire mix. It could just be one track at a time if you've got something soloed. That's what it'll do. That's more of a real-time operation, but it does work. And then if I arm this track to record instead, as soon as I start recording here, it's going to play that track and capture it right into a new clip here. I can let it loop a couple times if I want to. Just go back. Probably trying to do all the Zoom stuff at the same time. Now I've got 8 bar, do a clip of that. Just start looking for sake of loops, because loops are good.
Is there any not real-time way of doing this?
Yes, the non-real-time way would be to freeze the track.
Just freezing there, okay. Yeah.
There's a second step you can take called flattening the track, which that's what you want to do if you want to save a separate actual encoded PCM file of the audio. Freezing it is sort of similar, but a frozen track you can actually undo, change the parameters of your plugin, whatever it was you were using as an instrument, and then that would take effect. Whereas if you flattened it, you kind of lose some of those abilities to change and manipulate what you have. Yeah. The instrument that I have here is one that I made using the live instrument rack, where you can put a number of different devices on the chain. You can see I've got like various EQs and compression in there, saturation. Those can all be controlled with these macro knobs, and then you can button it all up and save that in your user library for next time.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Eric, how do you capture your quick idea in Pro Tools?
Figure it out. Okay. I would add a new track. I would scroll down, in this case, let's say I had a MIDI track, and then I would, there's presets here, which are really nice. I can choose one of these instruments here, which are pretty great. Say structure, 80s cat, and a MIDI track. So also you need, since I have nothing hooked up, a little MIDI keyboard. Where did that go? Shift K. Okay. Let's test that this is working. I believe I need to be record. Oh, lovely sound. Maybe I chose the wrong sound. Uh-oh, crash. It's a good example. Should have just chosen the. I didn't crash the whole thing, did I? Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Hey, there we go. Oh, Pro Tools is not responding. All right, so we're gonna full screen. Great example. Okay. Oh, see, it's just structure. They worked great when I used my piano.
It's one of those once a year. Just happens now, right?
Exactly. No, I mean, as we discussed before, I think that the MIDI stuff and whatever, that could be the weak point. But also my machine running Zoom and whatever at the same time. It's not happy.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really have much issue with Pro Tools crashing, but I also don't use the soft keyboards. So that might be one thing. I would say, I mean, of course, because of the time that we have, it's all about the efficiency that we're doing now, just how you get a quick idea in, but ideally it would be set up with an external keyboard and just receiving MIDI from the outside, which is usually pretty painless.
Let's just do that again. So MIDI track. And this time we'll do the piano. And that worked great. Okay, and bring the keyboard. So if I record both these things. Record. All right, and similar to as JD was showing, I would freeze this. I think that's the easiest way to do that. And once it's frozen, we can just commit that. Fine. And now it'll show up in my Finder.
Okay, great.
That was a pretty quick recovery.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, I know that we're running just a little bit late and we have one task left, so I would hate for everyone to miss that when we're going to import a movie file and also an audio file and spot them in a way that they will line up. We have a movie file and an audio file with a 2-pop prepared. And also it should line up with the time code on our ruler, so in the time of a session. So Phil, would you like to show us how that's done?
I will do my best. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go and get this file. So I have a MP4 that I'm just going to drag into the session. And if it's okay, I'm going to just make this window smaller because we don't care too much about that. And then there should be a little piece of audio here that I'm going to bring in as well. So I think the task was to go ahead and spot this video at 1 minute. Correct? So
yes.
If I just go to this little time code here for video offset, I can just hit 1 minute. And then if I play this back, let me move this out of the way. Starting right there, we should see it start at the 1 minute mark. Yeah, so that's good. That's working fine. And then the way the audio was on this track, there's a little slate. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. So if I play this back, you'll hear everybody hear the little beep.
Yep.
So that's our slate, and I'm kind of grateful that you put it right at the very beginning of the thing. So what I can do now is simply just move this on the timeline so that it lines up with our slate. So that beep And I'll zoom in so that I can be as accurate as possible. Starts right there. So that should line up with the slate in the video, such that if I play it back at this point, we should have everything lined up. Yeah, I think that looks and sounds correct.
Great. Are you in a frame-based grid here when you're moving the files? Then they're snapping to the grid, to the closest
Actually,
frame.
I wasn't, but I can certainly go to my time base and I can change the frames.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you're correct. I wasn't there at that moment. And the other thing that can be weird, obviously, is that sometimes, depending on where the audio comes from, because frame rates are so huge compared to audio sample rates, you might have to switch to sample rate or seconds to get it really lined up correctly. Because yeah, video frame rates are just kind of huge compared to audio. So
yeah.
That's
Great.
it.
Cool. Thank you, Matt.
All right. Okay, let me share here. So I'm going to just go here and import the video file as MP4. And I'm going to switch here to timecode. And if I select this video, I can just type right in here that I want it to start at 1 minute. And there it is. All right, and now I'm going to grab the audio file. All right, and if I click this button, my video will show the frame numbers. And if I open the actual video window here, I'm going to look for that, where that 2 shows up is right about there. And if I zoom in, I can set my grid here to move 1 frame at a time. So I can basically just pop that to start. Looks like frame 22 is what we need, right? So I could just pop it right there at frame 22 and turn the metronome off. I did not hear I have the wrong file. That's what it is. Okay. Sorry about that. We need this file. And we want that.
Yeah, that looks more like it.
22. And there we go. Okay, so there it is. Okay.
Cool. Great. Thank you. Austin.
Cool.
You don't use Logic for post, but
Yes, not Logic's strong suit, but we should be able to at least get a video in here. So I can just grab this video, real simple. I can really just drag it in. Then I'm watching my time code in the top left center sort of area, and you can see it move. I'm just gonna set it to 1 minute. Logic's great because it's gonna ask me, it's like, hey dude, are you sure you got the frame rate right? And I'm like, actually, I would love to use 29.97. Thanks, Logic. Cool. Let's zoom in, see, it does some funny stuff sometimes where you dragged it in at 1 and it decided it wanted to do something else, which is annoying. So let's just go ahead and pop it back there. And then we want the audio to go with it, of course. Let's bring that in, just drag it in really easy. Let's move to the top of the project file. And then this is the same exact workflow as you've been seeing. It's gonna drag it over. And now I'm watching the time code here just because it's nice and big. And then boom. Cool. Logic is a peculiar beast with this sort of thing. It's like it rounds it, which is odd, but it should be fine. There we go. Boom.
yep, that works. Not too bad. JD, let's see how Ableton can handle this. Live, sorry.
No problem. So let's see, the video clip, I guess to show how I would have brought it in if I hadn't already done it, in the current project I have some of the files that are existing in the folder in my desktop, and I would simply drag this onto the timeline here. Similarly with the audio sample, if I have it, pull it in, drop it in where I want it. To edit out that pop at the beginning, I'm not sure. You can kind of see where the actual start of the program might be, say right at this mark here. I'm going to just put a marker there, so-called warp marker, and then select that as, bar 1, measure 1, beat 1. Sorry, yeah, and sub beat 1, and then start playback there. So that's where it'll start when I put the file in the timeline here. So that gets rid of the pop, takes you right to the beginning of the file. It's a little extra from what I had before. And we are soloing those tracks alone. Can people see the little video window here? Or do you only see?
We can see the video.
You can see the video, great. So it will show you the video here. You can resize it if you want. You can't see where you're at. You put the playhead. Sorry, I forgot to turn it down. Yeah.
So you will be lining up the two-pop, the actual sine tone with the flashing 2 in the video, right?
Oh, sorry. I think I misunderstood the goal.
Yeah. So if you line up the flash with the little sine wave 1 frame long pop, then everything is gonna play together.
Okay, but I don't actually hear that, right? Necessarily.
Yeah, no, we can totally hear it. We can cut it off later.
Okay. So where's the pop? Just where the 2 flashes there?
Yep.
That's about where that is. You can do it off entirely, or just sort of scrubbing through here. I lost it. Ah, there it is. So what I might try to do is, put a marker on the timeline. Once I kind of have the video file where I want it. Where that flashing 2 is, boom, and put a locator there, here. Then that makes it easy to drag the audio file over and just kind of line it up visually. You zoom in as much as you want. You want to go with like the leading or the trailing edge of that, the little flip. Just go to the leading edge. That should have everything lining up pretty well.
Are you on your timeline in the session? Are you actually at 58 seconds here into your session?
Oh, sorry. No, to do that, I would find a mark. That's what we should do. Find 58 seconds in the actual timeline. Down
So you would move it there.
Yeah, and move it there. 58 seconds is going to be. This is currently in video frames, so you can choose if you want. Let's go just straight time. That would be easy.
Okay. So it's doable, but somewhat of a manual process.
Yeah.
I haven't really met anyone who would like to get into post-production and they're looking at live to do that, but I think that's an interesting task.
Yeah, it's a little cumbersome. I know they try to make it doable, but they don't put a lot of emphasis on it. So 58 seconds would be over here somewhere, right? There's in other DAWs there's an easy way to set the very start of your timeline here to be something else, other than 000, like a 1 hour mark or 58 minutes or 58, something like that. That's quite common for post.
Yeah.
How do you do that in live?
Okay.
A little bit of a hindrance.
All right.
I'm gonna keep on going while I release the share, so I'm caught up.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, Eric, Pro Tools.
Okay. I would import out the shortcut. And I would choose box. Often the audio, come with that, right? So if there is audio embedded. So we want that at 1 minute, 0. Boom, we get our window. Looking for our sync block. Find it here. I like JD's idea. Put a marker there, or we could even put a sync point there. Well, let's see, I could do the same with the audio and, well, let's assume I don't know what it is, right? I don't know where my sync point is. So if I just bring it in and I want to find, in this case, it's at the head. So I couldn't really put it. I don't think I can do that, can I? I'm gonna do sync point at the very head. I've never done that. I thought that could be a cool way to do this. Let's see. I don't think it'll do that. But just as a neat way to show, well, this is longer than a frame, but a neat way to show what Pro Tools can do with sync points. You know, if I'm now going to spot mode, I don't remember, did we say that was a 58?
Yeah, 58.
Okay, so if I did 58 even for that sync point, I guess that's not correct. Did I get something wrong? Oh, this is at hour 1. Oh, so this whole piece should actually be, if we want that at 58. This isn't actually started out at 50, it starts at what, 5708. So really to have all that line up, this should be, the video should be to, 5708 would match that, right? And in which case this then matches. I couldn't put that sync exactly right there, so we go back to grid mode and maybe move that. That's how I would do that with sync points and kind of efficiency. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so sync points and adding sync points and spotting based on sync points I think is a fantastic feature in Pro Tools. You don't always have to work with the beginning or the end of a clip, but you can just drop any sync point and then spot that and type in the time code and you're there.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, thank you. All right, so we are running late and have come to the end, but as a last question, I would like all the panelists to come online and turn on their cameras. And I'm curious, what did you like? What did you dislike? What do you envy about someone else's DAW? If you had to choose and migrate over to a different program, what would that be and why? And just free discussion, we don't have to go in order.
I really like that drawing the waveform thing, actually. You heard me anticipating wanting it just before I saw it. So,
you know, that's been in Pro Tools for since Pro Tools 4.
Yeah,
which is actually pretty cool.
It's a pretty basic feature.
When you sent us demonstrate one of your DAW's favorite features, there's an editing feature in Studio One that I absolutely love because I'm a drummer, and so I'm editing, time stuff all the time, and it allows you to actually move the audio without moving the boundaries of the audio. So you don't have to do this backfilling and crossfading business. It's really kind of awesome, and I don't know if that's available in other DAWs, but I absolutely love that feature in Studio One. So that's kind of my parting shot.
I think that was first in live.
Say that again.
That appeared first in live.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, no, I love it. It's really, really awesome.
Warping. Yeah.
But Phil, is there anything that you sort of envy that you saw today that you kind of like more?
I mean, I guess nothing in particular. I think I would just envy maybe some of the depth of outputting in different formats, like I talked about before, like surround. I just think I'm kind of limited in terms of the scope of what's possible with Studio One in terms of kind of going higher level post production. Yeah, apart from that, yeah.
Maybe Presonus will watch this at one point and they'll add it for you.
Yeah, maybe so.
Okay, how about everyone else?
In terms of envy, I mean, what we just saw Eric do is like the exact thing that made me switch to Pro Tools basically for post. It just works better for working in post. I didn't really see like anything. I don't think we got deep enough necessarily with the other DAWs for me to see something, because I think we ran out of time. But yeah, I would just kind of reiterate that there's a reason why I used to.
That's fair.
Matt, anything that you like that you don't have in Cubase?
Nothing in particular. We have the draw on waveform also, but not in the timeline. So we have like a sample editor that you'd have to go into. But I think what I said initially, just it would be nice to have a larger user base also, because a lot of people outside of the, film composing industry aren't using it that much. But and also what I said about just the smoothness of the interface sometimes, I feel I could use a real refresh. So I'm a bit jealous, especially Ableton and Logic seem really polished and up to date. At least, they do a good job, I think, of keeping the look nice and smooth. So I will, I'll throw in a parting shot too. So one of the biggest things keeping me in Cubase is, as far as exporting, they have, you can create jobs, so you can set like, okay, I'm going to export my stereo mix, and then I'm going to export all my stems and have my stems include my send effects and include my master bus processing. And you can create like a job list and then just press one button and go have coffee while it exports everything. So that's one thing that I couldn't live without. It saves me so much time at the end of a project.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Eric?
I haven't seen anything that I've envied necessarily, but one thought that came to mind is it's great to have variety of all these different DAWs, and there's more that we haven't included here. But there's also, a lot of value in having a standard. The Pro Tools is really helpful. All of us in different disciplines, and getting projects even years old or moving, you might mix something, and then like a lot of my work is remixing things in Atmos. So I get projects from all kinds of studios, and it's great when there is one thing that everything kind of comes from, and you have a common language for a lot of things, and certain things that make it easy as the audio community in general. I think there's something to appreciate in that. As much as we like variety, there's also, the more options we throw in things, the harder we're going to make it for ourselves, I think, in the big picture in some ways. So I value Pro Tools for that, serving that function too.
That's great. Thank you. And I must say, I really like that snap to zero crossing and editing out clicks without even needing to worry about crossfades in Cubase. So that actually impressed me today. But so I guess with that, we're going to wrap up, and we hope that you found this somewhat entertaining and, more importantly, educational. And I would like to thank the guests for joining, and our panelists, of course, for joining and demonstrating these functions. Also to Jessica Livingston, chair of AES San Francisco section committee. I would like to also thank the committee members for their support, University of Silicon Valley. And without all of these supports, it would have been impossible to make this event this great. Also a very special thank to BT Gibbs, who was instrumental in pulling this stream together after many different tests for different reasons that we had to do. And he was also our live Zoom director. So thank you, Gibbs, for doing that. And please join us again the next time. We're going to continue the audio education series with new topics. And until then, happy producing.
Yeah. I'd love to do it again. There's so many fun things that I think Ableton offers for just creative potential, that maybe they're in other DAWs, maybe not, but that'd be a fun thing to explore. More like, what wild things can you do that you might not have thought of if they hadn't been there. Also, I want to give a shout out to the people who make these. You see it? Yeah, these keyboard overlays. Super helpful for anybody who's learning a DAW. They make them pretty much for everyone out there. Look on eBay or wherever. Thanks. I'm done.
Cool. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you later next
Thanks to the
time.
other panelists. So that was very informative. I definitely learned a lot.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Take care.